It's the time now in the show for us to get a check of the markets. Our market analyst will be here in just a moment. So making news this week, the USDA reports that beef production is down this year. We'll see what's causing it. The flooding is a tremendous tragedy for many farmers, but is the loss great enough to make waves in the overall market? We'll look at that. And even cattle producers who didn't get flooded out are feeling some indirect impacts. So what are the main concerns there? Dr. Darrell Peel is here to answer those questions. He is a livestock marketing specialist with Oklahoma State University Extension. Thanks for being here, Darrell.
You bet.
So starting off, we've got reports from the USDA saying that U.S. beef production is down 1% year over year. Do you think the weather has been the main reason for that?
You know, so far this year, definitely weather has impacted beef production. We've seen reductions in carcass weights. There's some slaughter impacts as well. And for a year over year number for the whole year, we've been pulling back our estimates a little bit. We still think it'll be up probably 1 to 1.5% for the year. But we are shaving that number back a little bit based on the reductions we've had in the first quarter.
And reports also saying carcass weights are down too. Can you give the viewers some specifics on that and what those numbers mean?
Yeah, carcass weights, steer carcass weights are down about 7 pounds currently, and that's actually about the average reduction so far this year on a year-over-year basis. Heifer carcasses are actually down a little bit more than that. We've seen, those reductions as a result of weather. That's production in many cases that we will never get back. It's just lost. Obviously, when we've had the kind of adverse weather that we've had, those animals require a lot more feed. They lose production, and we just simply won't get that back.
Just to put in perspective, how are the numbers different this year than last year?
Well, steer carcass weights are running about 865 pounds right now. So again, they're down about 7 pounds right now. And again, and the heifers are down about 11 pounds, I believe. They're at 806 pounds, I believe it is. And so, you think about the number of cattle that we slaughter. On average, we slaughter about between 80 and 85,000 head of fed cattle a day on average. So you multiply that times, we're into this year so far, 110 days or 120 days almost. And so that's a pretty significant reduction in beef tonnage.
Darrell, any concern from you that the livestock losses we've seen from these floods are going to disrupt the cattle market much?
Well, in terms of overall market impacts, I do think on the box beef side we've seen a little bit of impact from these current impacts of the weather. Going forward, I don't know that we'll be able to see a lot of big impacts of the weather. In terms of cattle losses, things like that. We certainly have lost some cattle. I think a lot of those losses were probably in terms of baby calves. And we won't really know until we get to this fall kind of where we stand on that. But in any event, even though it's a big impact on the producers affected, it's probably not going to be a big enough impact overall to have a huge impact on the marketplace.
Gotcha. But even for the producers who didn't get flooding, there have still been a fair number of indirect impacts. What are some of the main concerns from producers that you've talked to on that end?
Well, there's been lots of impacts, and of course we've talked about floods, but really the broader winter weather impacts. In fact, that may be the bigger impact in terms of both performance impacts as well as death loss issues for feedlot cattle and also these cattle out in the country and the baby calves. So again, there's that big weather impact, but then indirectly, we've had lots of disruption in transportation, some localized issues, obviously, with respect to getting feed to cattle that have been stranded in winter weather or stranded by the floods. There's lots of disruption in the feed market or the grain side of this thing, which does have some impacts on the cattle markets as well.
And what marketing and risk management advice do you have for producers? A lot of folks finish with calving this time of year, getting things in order for the next few months. What can you tell them?
Well, if you get past this weather impacts, and obviously lots of folks have lots of issues to deal with to get past that, but for the broader, set of producers and the broader market, we're in a pretty stable environment right now in cattle markets. In fact, I think it's probably one of the more stable environments on an annual basis, really for the last couple of years and what we expect going forward. So a lot of stability, which means that producers can probably focus their attention a lot on the cost side of things, that's always advice that we give to manage costs. I don't think revenues are going to change a great deal on average. Now if I looked at specific markets right now, for the fall months, for the second half of the year, the feeder cattle futures market right now is really quite a bit higher than the cash market would suggest on a seasonal basis. So, for producers that would be selling either retained calves or perhaps some backgrounded or summer stocker calves this fall, there might be an opportunity in there to price these cattle and take advantage of that market right now.
Dr. Darrell Peel, thanks for being here with us today. Always appreciate your insight and good to speak with you. We'll do it again soon.
You bet. Anytime.